Every legend has a beginning, but some begin in the shadow of war, in the crucible of injustice. This is the story of a man whose name still whispers through the dusty plains of Missouri. A man hunted by a nation, yet revered by thousands. They called him a criminal, they called him a hero. But beneath the myth, who was Jesse James? To understand Jesse, you must understand his world. Missouri was a powder keg, a border state torn between North and South. It was a place where neighbor fought neighbor, where ideals clashed with brutal reality. Jesse Woodson James was born into this turmoil in 1847, a simple farm boy raised on biblical verses and the hard work of the land. But the peace of his childhood was a fragile illusion, soon to be shattered by the thunder of cannons and the cries of war. The war arrived at his doorstep with brutal force. Union Jayhawkers, fiercely abolitionist and often merciless, raided their farm. They tortured his stepfather, Dr. Reuben Samuel, hanging him to force information. Then, they turned on young Jesse. A vicious whipping wasn't just physical pain, it was an unforgivable humiliation. That day, something irrevocably broke inside him, and something new, something dangerous, began to form. He wasn't just a victim, he was being forged into an instrument of vengeance. The choice was clear. With the Union occupation, many young men from Missouri rode south, not to join the Confederate Army, but to become bushwhackers, guerrilla fighters. Jesse, barely 16, followed his elder brother, Frank, into the ranks of William Quantrill's raiders, then later to Bloody Bill Anderson's notorious gang. These were not soldiers, they were highly effective, utterly ruthless partisans. Here, Jesse learned to kill, to ambush, to survive. He sharpened his aim, hardened his heart, and became intimately familiar with death. By the end of the Civil War, Jesse James was no longer a farm boy. He was a veteran of a brutal, unforgiving war that had never truly ended for him. As the 1870s dawned, America was changing. The railroad was the new spine of the nation, carrying the wealth of the industrial North across the wild frontiers. To Jesse James, these were not symbols of progress, they were moving targets of opportunity. On July 21, 1873, Jesse and his gang executed one of the most daring feats in criminal history, the first moving train robbery in the West. They didn't just stop a train, they sent a message. Donning KKK masks to terrify the passengers, they looted the safes, taking thousands in gold. This was the birth of a new kind of warfare, one where the battlefield was the tracks and the prize was the future of America. But Jesse was more than a bandit, he was a master of his own image. In an era before Hollywood, he understood the power of the press. He struck a partnership with John Newman Edwards, an editor who shared Jesse's Confederate sympathies. Together, they crafted a narrative of Jesse as a Robin Hood, a noble soldier forced into crime by Northern tyranny. Jesse would often hand out pre-written press releases during robberies, ensuring the papers told his version of the truth. He wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing the hearts of the common people, becoming the first true media-made superstar of the Wild West. The banks and railroads had enough. They turned to the most powerful force in private law enforcement, the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. Allan Pinkerton, the man who guarded Lincoln, vowed to bring Jesse James to justice. The hunt was relentless. For years, Pinkerton agents tracked the gang through the swamps and hills, but Jesse always had a head start. He was protected by a network of sympathizers who saw him as a hero. The frustration of the Pinkertons grew, and as the law failed to catch him, their methods turned from investigation to cold-blooded retaliation. The war became personal. In January 1875, Pinkerton agents threw a firebomb into the James family home, hoping to flush Jesse out. He wasn't there. Instead, the blast killed his 9-year-old half-brother and blew off his mother's arm. This act of brutality backfired spectacularly. The public was horrified. The Missouri legislature even considered an act of amnesty for the James brothers. The Pinkertons had turned a criminal into a martyr, and Jesse James, now fueled by a burning, personal rage, became more dangerous than ever before. Every outlaw's run has a dead end. For Jesse James, that wall was Northfield, Minnesota. In September 1876, the gang attempted to rob the First National Bank, but they made a fatal mistake. They underestimated the townspeople. Ordinary citizens grabbed their hunting rifles and turned the street into a killing floor. In minutes, the gang was decimated. The younger brothers were shot to pieces and captured. Only Jesse and Frank escaped, fleeing like ghosts into the wilderness. The invincible James Younger gang was dead. Jesse was now a man alone, hunted not just by the law, but by his own shadows. For 5 years, Jesse lived under the alias Thomas Howard. He tried to be a father, a husband, a quiet neighbor. But the bounty on his head was a fortune, $10,000, dead or alive. Governor Thomas Crittenden had made it clear, Jesse James must fall. Paranoid and desperate, Jesse recruited new men, including the Ford brothers. He thought they were loyal. He didn't realize he was inviting his own executioners into his home. The legend was getting tired, and the world was moving on without him. April 3, 1882, a warm morning in St. Joseph, Jesse James did something he never did. He laid down his guns. He noticed a dusty picture on the wall and climbed a chair to clean it. It was the only opening Robert Ford needed. A dirty little coward, seeking fame and the reward, fired a single shot into the back of Jesse's head. The man who had survived 100 gunfights was killed in his own parlor, unarmed, while fixing a picture of Home Sweet Home. The outlaw was dead, but the myth was just beginning. They buried him, but they couldn't kill the legend. Thousands flocked to his funeral. His mother charged tourists for stones from his grave. Jesse James became the eternal American rebel, a man who fought the system and lost, but won immortality. In the end, was he a hero or a monster? Perhaps he was both. A product of a violent age, a ghost of the Civil War who never stopped writing. His story is America's story, brutal, complicated, and impossible to forget. But what if the bullet didn't end the story? For decades, whispers haunted the Ozark Mountains. Rumors suggested that the man Robert Ford killed wasn't Jesse James, but a look-alike named Charles Bigelow. People claimed Jesse faked his own death to escape the Pinkertons and lived a long, quiet life under a new name. This theory turned a simple crime story into one of America's greatest mysteries. Was the world's most famous outlaw clever enough to vanish into thin air, leaving a decoy for the history books? In 1948, a 100-year-old man named J. Frank Dalton came forward, claiming to be the real Jesse James. He knew details only Jesse could know: secret gang handshakes, the location of hidden loot, and scars from Civil War wounds. While DNA tests in the 1990s attempted to debunk these claims, many still believe. The legend of Jesse James is so powerful that America refused to let him stay in the grave. To this day, treasure hunters still search the hills of Missouri for his lost Confederate gold, rumored to be worth millions. Jesse James didn't just stay in history books, he invaded our culture. He became the blueprint for the outlaw hero. From Hollywood blockbusters to video games and country songs, his DNA is everywhere. He represents that wild, untamable part of the American spirit, the rebel who stands against the machine. Every time you see a movie about a bank robber with a heart of gold, you are seeing the ghost of Jesse James. He is the original American anti-hero, a man whose shadow stretches across 3 centuries. So, was he a cold-blooded murderer or a victim of his time? A Robin Hood or a common thief? The answer lies in the eye of the beholder. But one thing is certain, as long as there are stories to be told about the Wild West, Jesse James will be leading the pack. What do you think? Was Jesse a hero or a villain? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join us as we uncover more legends of the American frontier. Jesse James wasn't a lone wolf. He was the leader of a brotherhood of blood. His older brother Frank was the intellectual, the quiet, Shakespeare-quoting tactician. The younger brothers, Cole and Bob, were the muscle-hardened veterans who feared nothing. This wasn't just a gang, it was a paramilitary unit formed in the fires of the Civil War. Their loyalty was their greatest strength, but it would also become their ultimate downfall. To understand the terror they spread, you must understand the bond that held them together, a bond forged in gunpowder and shared secrets. The James Younger gang unknowingly gave birth to modern American law enforcement. Before Jesse, crime was local, but because he crossed state lines, the United States had to evolve. The failure to catch Jesse led to the professionalization of the Pinkerton Agency and eventually laid the groundwork for what would become the FBI. Detectives began using crime scene photography and national wanted databases because of the James brothers. Every time you see a modern police chase or a federal investigation today, you are seeing a system that was built to stop men like Jesse. While Jesse died in a hail of betrayal, his brother Frank chose a different path. 6 months after Jesse's death, Frank walked into the governor's office, unbuckled his holster, and said, "I have been hunted for 21 years. I am tired of this life." In a shocking turn of events, Frank was acquitted by juries who still saw him as a hero. He spent his final years as a quiet farmer and a shoe salesman, outliving his brother by 33 years. He was the living proof that while the outlaw era was over, the spirit of the rebel lived on in the heart of the American people. The dust has settled on the trails of Missouri, and the steam trains have long since stopped being targets. But the name Jesse James remains etched into the bedrock of American history. He was a product of a violent nation, a mirror reflecting the country's own internal struggles. As you close this chapter, ask yourself, is the legend more real than the man? Thank you for riding with us through the Wild West. Stay tuned for our next dive into the lives of the most dangerous heroes of history.